Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast brought to you by our friends over at Briar Greaves Insurance. Protecting your family starts with a company that you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, there's nobody better in the business to work with than the great people over at Briar Greaves Insurance. For more information, visit briargreavesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a Wednesday edition of the Pewter Report podcast, and hello to everybody that is just getting into the comments and chats. We appreciate you rocking and rolling with us. We're happy to get to some comments today, and of course, Super Chats get to cut the line. It is our second show of the week. There was no show yesterday because the Buccaneers had practice at night, as SpongeBob SquarePants once said. So they were indoors and participated during the evening. So we are going to spend today's show recapping what happened last night. So let's get into this episode. It's the Chain Gang on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is Bailey Adams, who was out there with me last night as well. Bailey, how we doing?
Doing well, Matt. Good to see you again.
Yeah, Chain Gang, because we're wearing the chains. We also are the Bucket Hat Boys. If you've been watching our YouTube shorts and Instagram reels and stuff like that, kind of depending on the situation. But appreciate everybody that is watching today's show. Also, as you saw in the headline, are Baker Mayfield's interceptions a cause for concern? Because I think so far that's been one of the biggest storylines, Bailey, is maybe not even necessarily the, Baker Mayfield throwing the picks, but the swarming of the Buccaneers defense. Mm-hmm. But let me first ask you, we were indoors last night. It was a later time. This was designed by Todd Bowles because, let's face it, the Bucs sucked in primetime last year when they had to wait around and finally play at night. From an energy standpoint and collective group effort, how do you think everything looked last night?
Yeah, I thought the intensity was high. I thought the competition, I think all throughout camp so far has been really good. I think we got to see some live tackling last night. I think they've walked the right line between a little bit of physicality and getting stupid with some of the feistiness and the fights and stuff. Nothing crazy like that so far. Although when that kind of stuff happens, I don't mind it too much. But
yeah.
I think they've done a good job with the competition level so far, and last night was definitely a good one.
I don't know about you, because you and I have been out there every single day. It feels like there's a nice budding rivalry right now between Sterling Shepard, the veteran wide receiver who was here last year, good friends with Baker Mayfield. Even Baker has said that, Sterling Shepard has a screw loose. So Sterling Shepard and Jacob Parrish seem to have had their own little budding rivalry a little bit. Shepard's been getting into it with everybody. Have you seen that too?
Yeah, I have, definitely. And I think it was actually kind of funny putting this together from when we talked to Jacob Parrish yesterday. He was talking about how he's learned from a lot of the vets, obviously on the defensive side of the ball. And I think he did talk about, Sterling Shepard being a guy that he's been able to learn a lot from as well. So I think there's been a little bit of, physicality, some press at the line, and Shepard hasn't liked it too much. But I think Christian Izien was the one who kind of fell victim to some of Shepard's fresh frustration last night, because Shepard put him on the ground at one point too.
Christian Izien, who, congratulations to him, he's already made the team, as Todd Bowles kind of said the other day. Christian Izien has been so much fun to watch because there is a common theme, not just with him, but they're moving a lot of guys from safety to nickel. And all of those things. But he's really stepped it up, I think, in several ways. Just his awareness of where he needs to be on defense, what's coming from the offense, and a little bit of cockiness, too. It's been fun to see what Christian Izien has done early on during this camp.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's one of the guys who I think has stood out the most in the secondary. I mean, a lot of them have, really. I mean, we'll get to it. We'll get to the interception totals and all that. But we're seeing a bunch of different guys step up, and I think it speaks a lot to the depth that the Bucs now have, both at cornerback, both at nickel, at safety. It's all over the place, and a lot of guys are stepping up.
And two people that really stood up last night was Benjamin Morrison, the second-round pick from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Bryce Hall, who is on – I don't want to say a revenge tour because there'd really be no one to have revenge against besides the Commanders, and they don't play the Commanders yet until hopefully the NFC Championship game. Wink, wink. But they were the guys that had interceptions last night, at least off of Baker Mayfield. There was another one later on in practice. The Benjamin Morrison one was very interesting because it started off with a great 30-yard reception by Mike Evans, who we'll talk about later on the show because he had a press conference yesterday. Mike Evans started it off with a 30-yard reception on a pass from Baker Mayfield. They pretty much tried to run a similar play on the next play, but Baker was intercepted by Benjamin Morrison. And then later on, Baker was looking for Emeka Egbuka in the corner of the end zone where Bryce Hall kind of went and jumped up, made a nice athletic play, covering Egbuka in the corner of the end zone with the interception. The numbers are piling up for Baker Mayfield specifically. I mean, all three Bucs quarterbacks have 4 interceptions. Baker probably stands out a little bit more because he's playing the most, and he is the starting quarterback for this team, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But what'd you make of the play by Morrison and Bryce Hall last night?
Yeah, I thought specifically with the Morrison play, it was something I wrote about in the Insider last night. It was a very good display of having a short memory, which you have to have as an athlete and as a cornerback especially. And I mean, even we talked to Todd Bowles after practice, and Bowles was saying, Morrison, honestly, he made a good play on the first one too, where he allowed the 30-yard completion to Mike Evans. He said he made a good play on that, and Mike just kind of adjusted the route as a savvy veteran does. And then Morrison came right back with the interception on the next play. So it was good to see him get his hands on the football for one, and for two, just him being able to respond after giving up a big play like that, coming right back and getting his revenge on the next play. With Bryce Hall, I've just been continuing to be impressed with kind of his comeback, I guess you could call it. Going down with a leg injury week 1 last year and re-signing this offseason and kind of being like, all right, where is he going to fit in the depth chart and all that? And I think right now he's carving out a spot on his on the roster for him because the Bucs were badly needing depth, and they badly missed him late last year with him being hurt. And I think he can be really valuable off the bench this year.
Oh, I'm in love with the depth that the Bucs have at corner now that Bryce Hall is really stepping up his game and making several plays like throughout training camp. And even last year's training camp, there was talk of like, I don't know, he's getting beat here and there. And it was that, but it was also the conversation of, well, it is training camp versus like what's going on in the preseason and what will happen in the regular season. And unfortunately, we never really got to see that just because of the injury that happened in week 1 against the Washington Commanders. So I love that. I mean, there's got to be a back and forth with the offense and the defense. And for all the worry about Baker Mayfield, let's remember Todd Bowles was at the forefront saying, I want ball hogs. I want aggressiveness. I want people to take the ball away. So I guess it's kind of like, what would you rather have? Baker Mayfield balling out, flying around, tossing the ball everywhere, and there's tons of touchdowns, or the defense going and kind of making a number of plays like they have? Where's your concern level with Baker Mayfield? And
I'd say non-existent, honestly. It's something I wrote about again in the Insider last night was, whenever you have plays like that, it's exactly like you said, two sides of the same coin, I guess, in a sense, because if the defense makes a great play, it means it was a bad play for the Bucs offense. So you're always going to kind of have that. I don't know if you call it a catch-22, if that's the right way to use that. But I think with Baker, one, he's adjusting to kind of pushing the ball downfield a little bit more under Josh Grizzard. So, that ups the risk factor. And at the same time, it ups the potential for explosive plays. That's what they're getting at. And I think practice is the time to obviously hone that and get on the same page with those receivers down the field. And it's kind of just in Baker's it's in his nature to take some risks. Yeah. And he's obviously going to do that on the practice field, maybe even a little bit more than in a game setting. And I think there's really nothing to really worry about. He had, honestly, until last night, we just put that graphic up where it was all of the guys were at four interceptions. Baker threw the 2 last night, but I think that was after 2 or 3 straight days where he wasn't intercepted at all. So Last night stood out, obviously, but I'm not concerned about it. I think it speaks more to, the improvement of the back end of Todd Bowles' defense and what we're seeing from a large variety of guys back there, like I just mentioned, with every position, safety, corner, and then at nickel as well. I think it's been more so impressive to see that than anything to do with Baker.
Yeah, and here is the total interception count through 6 practices for the Bucs in 2025 training camp. We have a tie at the top with safety Antoine Winfield Jr. and Bryce Hall at 2. Now, Winfield did it on the first practice of training camp, recorded 2, where Bryce Hall also had one that first day with Antoine Winfield Jr. And then recorded one last night. So they are tied at 2, along with Kindle Vildor, someone that we've spoken about a lot. Tyke Smith has 1. Jacob Parrish everyone else has 1. Tyke Smith, Jacob Parrish, Benjamin Morrison, who did it last night, Christian Izzian, Kayvon Merriweather, and Josh Hayes was the other one that recorded an interception last night. I believe that came off of Connor Bazelak late in training camp. We are actually walking over to where we were going to be speaking to Todd Bowles after. But getting back to Baker again real quick, we did speak to offensive coordinator Josh Grizzard before practice started. And I think it's important to recognize as well that there is a little bit more of an emphasis of pushing the ball vertically down the field. So you're going to take a couple of liberties and risks when it really comes to that. So Grizzard was talking about it before. He says it's something we've stressed in the offseason from the time they got here in April through the plays we were running in the spring to try to push the ball down the field a little bit more. We did a bunch of it in the spring and have done a good amount of it so far here. It is a great challenge with all the blitzes, trying to hold up in protection and be in the right protection to be able to get that off. To be able to get the throw down the field, it's something we're stressing and will continue to stress. So I think because of that, you're going to see a couple of more mistakes by Baker Mayfield. I think context is important too. For example, the interception by Christian Izzian off of Kyle Trask the other day at practice. That was a play where, there was 10 seconds left on 4th down. You had to throw it into the end zone. Kyle Trask isn't making that play on 1st and 10, right, from the 15-yard line. And again, we have to give credit to the Bucs defense. But what do you make overall of the, I guess, sluggish start for the Bucs offense? Because I think it's fair to say through 6 practices, you could probably say it's 4-1-1 with one being a tie for the defense right now through 6 practices. Do you think it's growing pains with Josh Grizzard a little bit, or what would you point to specifically?
I think to an extent it might be some growing pains with Grizzard and more so just the adjustment to trying some different things. They didn't push the ball down the field as much under Liam Cohen, and I think that's one of the we saw it yesterday. We just talked about those 2 plays. The first one being the 30-yarder to Mike Evans. The second one was essentially the same play where they had the play action. Baker kind of rolled out and looked deep down the field. The second time was McMillan was in the intended receiver. So I think it's been kind of a concerted effort for them to try this out and kind of get the mistakes out now and kind of get on the same page with all the receivers. So I think part of it is that, and I don't know. It seems to me from you have more experience than I do, but it always kind of seems like the defense, not just in Tampa, but kind of everywhere, tends to have the upper hand early on in camp. And I think as camp goes on, we kind of see the offense settle into everything.
Yes, I would certainly say so, especially with Todd Bowles, who, he is not treating Josh Grizzard with kid gloves by any means. Day one, it's all right, call it period, screw you. We're not going to tell each other what we're doing. And Josh Grizzard mentioned that as well, where, you might have a little bit of an idea, but there's not a lot of pre-planned and mapped out stuff. So, Bowles is sending Jacob Parrish, and he's sending Antoine Winfield Jr., and he's giving all of these crazy, chaotic looks. And then there's even different sessions within the 11-on-11s. There is hey, we need to get into field goal range with a minute left and 1 timeout. And then there's we'll start at the 25. You got to travel 70, 80 yards down the field and score a touchdown. So Grizzard kind of alluded to the fact that, there's times where you're calling 20 plays in a row, and then there's other times where it's only 5 to 7 plays and you get a different outlook. I would also keep in mind for everybody a couple of different factors as well, where the pads just came on. So we're not seeing a crazy amount of running or running plays with Bucky, with Rashad White. That's really about it because everyone else is injured, at running back with the Williams. Sean Tucker, we'll talk about a little bit later on the show, but Sean Tucker definitely had his best practice yesterday as well. But there's not that element of biting on the play action or anything like that because they're just not running it that much. And there's a lot of sessions where it's just passing and then it's just running. It's not kind of like the mixed combination. Also, let's keep in mind, no Tristan Wirfs. Now, no one's going to be crying for the Bucs that Tristan Wirfs isn't in there. But no Tristan Wirfs, no Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans essentially practices every other day. So as much as we like Emeka Egbuka, as much as we like Jalen McMillan and Bucky and everyone like that, you're still missing your top three guys with Wirfs and then Evans for a lot of it and Godwin for all of it. The advantage should go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense based on, all of those guys that are missing. And I still think there's going to be growing pains with Josh Grizzard. I would sure as hell rather have it right now in training camp going against the Bucs defense specifically than have it against Atlanta and have it against Houston and, LA and Detroit later on in the season when they go against them. So with the topic of this being the concern about Baker Mayfield's interceptions, I don't think it's concerning at all whatsoever just yet. It's just patience needs to come through, and we're going through it right now. I think everything will be okay by September.
Yeah, I think so, and I think like I just mentioned too, like he had the two last night, but before that, the only other two he had, I just kind of remember this was those Antoine Winfield Jr. interceptions on back-to-back plays on day one. Like that was day one. One of those was, I believe, a tip pass that Zion almost got. Mike Evans ripped it out of his hand, and it kind of fell into the hands of Antoine Winfield Jr. So, I mean, yeah, he went from 2 on day one and stayed at 2 for another 4 practices. And then last night, trying to push the ball down the field a little bit, taking some chances in the red zone, all that. I'm not concerned. I'm more impressed with what we're seeing from the secondary.
I would also just mention there should have been an interception from Antoine Winfield Jr. the other day. It was, a can of corn fly ball to him, and he just dropped it. And Anthony Nelson, Bailey, almost had an interception last night, dropping back in coverage. And I even said to you at the time, I will never forget when Anthony Nelson had an interception in joint training camp practice against the New York Jets and Zach Wilson a couple of years ago. That was more of like a screen pass where Nelson was in his natural outside linebacker position against the Jets. This one, he was legitimately back in coverage. So Baker is not reckless or has not been reckless by any means, but also got bailed out a little bit here and there. Let's remember, Baker was tied for the league lead in interceptions. He is a gunslinger at the end of the day. Now, I'm not saying that he should be doing that all the time, should be able to get away with it, but you might see a couple of more examples of that. But I'm with you. I think it's more about the defense and what they've been able to do. And we talked about Benjamin Morrison slightly, getting that interception at the beginning of practice. He's a guy, in my opinion, let's remember, he did not participate. He's coming off of the hip surgery, didn't participate in mandatory minicamp because they wanted to keep him ready for training camp. I don't think he had a slow start by any means, but I would say the last 2 or 3 practices, there's only been 6, but the last 2 or 3, I think he's really found his footing over those past couple of days, whether it's going up against Mike Evans or being able to anticipate where the ball is going to be or just understanding what's coming his way. I think Benjamin Morrison continues to get better and better each day.
I think so too, and I'm trying to think here because I know he had his first interception last night, and I think the day before during one-on-ones he had a nice interception.
Yes, we are not counting the one-on-ones for the interceptions, by the way, just so everyone is clear.
Yeah, so he did have that. He had good coverage on Raheem Jarrett on that play, I think. So I think he's starting to get a little more comfortable. We saw him mixing in with the starters on Tuesday night, and I do. I think the arrow is pointing up, and you're seeing. I think it was Todd Bowles that even said it. He said you're seeing what he can do, a little bit more when he's healthy. And he praised how smart he is, and he even said last night he can see things happening before they happen. So the field vision, the anticipation he plays with, I think, are all starting to be put on display out there on the practice fields.
So we'll put up the list again, and for those listening on Spotify or listening to the audio version, There are 3 players with 2 interceptions. That's Antoine Winfield Jr., Bryce Hall, and Kendall Vildor. Everyone else here has 1. That's Tyke Smith, Jacob Parrish, Benjamin Morrison, Christian Izzian, Kayvon Merriweather, and Josh Hayes. Noticeably, there are 2 names that are not on this list, and they're both technically the starters at cornerback. That's Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean. Bailey, on one hand, it's not surprising that Jamel Dean does not have an interception, but at the same time, it's kind of crazy that everyone's had, like, it's an interception fiesta right now, and yet the 2 starters, Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum, do not have an interception just yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of split between the 2 right now because it's 2 different situations to me. With Jamel, yeah, it's not too surprising. I think for me, what is more concerning with Jamel is that he hasn't even really been in position to make an interception. Like, he's just been very quiet throughout camp. Zion at least has been in position. He's had a couple pass breakups. I think he dropped an interception. It was either Monday or Sunday. And then he obviously had the one on day 1 where he nearly had the interception. Mike took it away and ended up as an Antoine Winfield Jr. interception. So Zion is in position to make some plays. He's gotten his hand on the football several times. Jamel, I just think, has been very quiet. And I know part of that is it's different in practice, but one of the things that I think gets overlooked about Jamel Dean is just how good he is in coverage. A lot of times he's not being targeted at all. So I'd have to, I can't obviously go back and look at the tape, but I'd have to kind of pay closer attention to see how many times he's even being targeted in practice to see if that's part of the reason why he's not getting his hand on the ball that much. But yeah, those are the 2 that are conspicuous by their absences there. But I think Zion, sooner rather than later, is going to be in another position to get one, and he'll bring it in.
Yeah, Zion has definitely been in the mix a lot. Like his battles with Mike Evans, Galveston on Galveston. Mike spoke about that yesterday as well. Mike actually said, let's see where it was. Shout out to the Bucs staff as well for transcribing a lot of this. He says, we are sharpening each other's games. It is crazy seeing him and his brother when they were young, and now I am competing against him, just being his teammate now for 4 seasons now. He has come a long way. He is one of the best corners in the game. Now, obviously, they're teammates. Mike's going to hype this guy up a little bit. And it's a battle every time we go against each other. Zion is coming very close. I will give Jamel Dean a little bit of... So, the one time he came close to an interception, it was against Mike, but oddly enough, he was beat deep by Mike on the play and was underthrown. So, I don't know how much credit he technically gets for that one. But then there was another battle where it was Jamel and Mike in the red zone. So, they were in the end zone almost every single play. And he stopped Mike from scoring a touchdown, which that's a win in of itself. I don't care if the pass is too high, or as long as you're in the way of Mike Evans and you're preventing him from scoring a touchdown, that's a win in that aspect. And Jamel Dean, I think we got to understand at this point, just isn't going to be a guy that takes the ball away too much. So if the Bucs can find a guy that can cover and take the ball away, which maybe they do in Benjamin Morrison, then he will be replaced. But until they have that answer, they at least have a guy that can take away some of the field. Now, no one's going to compare him to Darrelle Revis or Richard Sherman or anything like that. But we have to understand Jamel Dean is what he is at this point. And when you look at the entirety of the team, I don't necessarily look at him as a weak link. I just don't look at him as a top contributor to this team at the same standpoint. I think that's why we're seeing Morrison get some starts at corner with the ones. Todd Bowles will say they're moving everybody around, and they are, but I think it is very telling when practice starts, the 6th practice starts, and it's Benjamin Morrison in there with the ones.
Yeah, no, I think so too, and I think it might be a matter of time. But I do think that with all the talk about Jamel Dean and the injury issues, the lack of interceptions, it does get lost a little bit how consistent he has been on his level of play when he's on the field. That's been the problem all along, and that's where I think it's probably beneficial to get Morrison in there with the ones as often as they can, because even if they go into the season and they say, no, Jamel's still the guy on the other side of Zion, with his history, there's going to be a time when Benjamin Morrison has to step in for Jamel Dean. Sometimes and oftentimes, even in the middle of a game, Jamel will miss some time during a game, and all of a sudden the next guy has to step up. So I think getting him as much exposure with the ones as possible at this stage of the off season, this stage of the preseason is really smart because you're going to need him at some point, whether he just flat out beats out Jamel Dean and takes that starting job, or whether it's as an injury replacement, inevitably. It's good that they're in that position right now.
Another guy I want to talk about real quick in the secondary, since we're on that subject, Tyke Smith made a hell of a pass breakup yesterday. It was a really cool play where the Bucs went play action. Baker rolled out to his left, so it was on his non-throwing side. Was looking for, I believe it was Devin Culp on the play. Was looking for Devin Culp, and Tyke Smith just ran right in front and was able to knock the ball away last second. It was a good designed play. It utilized Baker's throwing on the run ability. And Baker is really good at throwing on the run. Sometimes it's almost better than when he's in the pocket and stuff like that. But Tyke Smith making another play with the pass breakup. The dude just gets it. I have the utmost confidence in Tyke Smith. Yeah,
I do too. I think the move to safety has been seamless so far. I don't think there was any thought that it wouldn't be, considering he is an all football first guy. He is a high football IQ guy, and he's got some experience at safety before, so it's not completely foreign to him.
Right.
So yeah, I think so far the transition has gone extremely well, and he's another guy on the back end of that defense that Todd Bowles can move around wherever he needs to, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 guys like that on this roster right now during camp that Bowles continues to do that with, and I think that gives him so many options, when he's setting up the defense.
Tons and tons of options, but when it comes to finding the right people for your insurance, there's only one option, and that is Briar Greaves Insurance. If you are a longtime listener of the Pewter Report podcast, you probably remember the late, great Mark Cook talking about Briar Greaves Insurance. Pewter Report's Scott Reynolds has been a Briar Greaves customer for years, and there simply is not a better insurance company in the Tampa Bay area. So visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com to see for yourself. Briar Greaves Insurance is family-owned, and their main goal is helping people. They want to help people find the right insurance policy for you and your family. So whether it's home or auto, boating insurance, or business insurance, turn to Briar Greaves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. The days of waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative that you don't even know are over. With Briar Greaves Insurance, you'll have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on the best policies. As 2 recent hurricanes have shown all of us that live in the Tampa Bay area, there is a cost to living in paradise. Briar Greaves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance to make sure that you and your home are protected. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com today. That's Briar, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S, or call their office today at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166, and tell them that Pewter Report sent you. Even Jason Light, Bucs general manager Jason Light, uses Briar Greaves Insurance. So if you love the Bucs and you love Pewter Report and you love Jason Light specifically, do what he does and give a call over to Briar Greaves Insurance. Other people that we love are our Pewter Platinum members, so let's give a shout out to them. Thank you so much for all of your support to Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor For Reals, Kevin Thomas, Zach Jarvis, Leighton Carter, Doug I is Gifted, Brandon Riley, Alec Bickler, Nick Dubuque, and Mario Thomas. Thank you all so much for your support of PewterReport.com. We really appreciate each and every one of you. We also want to tell each and every one of you watching this show as well that we have a special show coming up next Monday on August 4th. Tony Dungy, friend of the program, is coming back on the show. Bailey will be on for that one. It'll be Scott and Bailey, as they will be chatting with Coach Dungy. We'll get his thoughts on the current 2025 team. We'll reminisce about the team that he used to coach as well, and his spending time in Tampa. There was a cool video that the Bucs have put out with the 50th year anniversary. Players and coaches from the past meeting up with players and coaches now. I know Mike Evans was with Derek Brooks at one point. Simeon Rice was with Yaya. Bucky Irving, or someone was with Mike Allstott as well. And there was a cool one with Tony Dungy and Todd Bowles kind of talking strategy and talking about the Super Bowl that Todd Bowles won as a defensive coordinator with the Bucs. So looking forward to having Tony Dungy on the show on Monday. So make sure everybody puts that in your calendars for Monday at 4:00. Tony Dungy joins the show. Let's talk a little bit more about the offense, Bailey. Notably, someone we haven't chatted about a ton since training camp has begun, but we noticed him a lot more last night, and that was Sean Tucker. Tell us about Sean Tucker and what he was doing last night.
Yeah, I think you see here him. He's continued to take reps as a kick returner, and I think that's still one of those two spots back there is still going to be his going into the season. But we saw him very, very involved. Obviously, they're not doing too much with Bucky right now, not wanting to get him any banged up or anything going into the season. Rashad's been getting some reps. Obviously, still blitz pickup, dynamite. A lot of action in the the screen game.
Yeah.
Same for Sean Tucker. He's catching screens. He's getting a lot of carries in with the the second and third groups. DJ Williams and Josh Williams are both sidelined last night, so you just saw Sean Tucker all over the place. I think he had a touchdown catch in the red zone.
He did.
From Kyle Trask, down near the goal line. It was sitting down actually at one point talking, catching up with some friends, and one of them said it was just like the HB angle play that you can run in Madden. It looked exactly like that. And so I think, I asked Todd Bowles after practice about, what he's seen from Sean Tucker and what the value that he's been bringing. And he said he's doing the same thing that, that he's done or he did last year when they put him in the ball game, which was make plays. He's making plays out there and doing everything they need him to do at the position. So, I mean, having that guy as your number 3 running back is kind of crazy when you look at it. It's 3 guys who, all of them could, I think, start for various teams throughout the league. Even and teams are probably envious that Sean Tucker is running back 3 in Tampa.
I hope that Sean Tucker this season, and we typically talk about this with like a speedy, undersized wide receiver like Devin Tompkins, who used to be on this team, or even like Tez Johnson or Cameron Johnson, who's still injured at the moment. But I hope that Sean Tucker can kind of be an impact player, but doing it in all of these different ways. Like if he is the starting kick returner, be the guy that gets the ball to the 35 or the 40. Obviously, you'd love for it every time, but realistically, that's probably not possible. Be the guy that can come in and affect the game in the passing game as a receiving running back. Because I think we saw that in doses last year, certainly the Saints game. But him scoring a touchdown last night, I think can show and prove that he brings a little bit more to the table than we see. It's going to really, really be difficult for him to take over a spot that Rachaad White has and certainly take over a spot that Bucky Irving has. Mm-hmm. But I think the Bucs, I mean, you look across the league, I don't think teams have their third string running back even remotely close to the capabilities that Sean Tucker has. And remember, the Bucs got him for an absolute bargain. He was an undrafted free agent 2 seasons ago because unfortunately he did have a heart condition that was found like during the whole draft process, combine and everything over there in Indy. That's really where all the news came about, and that's why he went undrafted. But there's still so many things that the Bucs can do with Sean Tucker, whether it's kick return, whether it's getting him on the field for a pony package, where, when we think pony package, we think Bucky and Rachaad White, but there could be some instances where it's Bucky and Sean Tucker or Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. So I hope he finds a way to get on the field in more ways than one, because I just think there's still so much more potential from Sean Tucker that we haven't even seen yet. And not every game is going to be the road game against the Saints where he wins NFC Offensive Player of the Week. But there's a lot of mouths to feed. I just hope he doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and I hope I think the Bucs hope that they see more from him this year too. Obviously, as a pass blocker, especially because Rachaad White is in a contract year, and honestly, from what I've seen from Rashad, I think he's sneakily had a very, very good camp so far. He had a good night last night. And, again, talking with some buddies last night, it was just, we were feeling like Rashad might have that kind of season where he just simply prices himself out of Tampa. I mean, I think there's the notion that he probably wants to go be a lead back somewhere else anyway, but I think he might just be getting too many offers elsewhere after this season. So you're going into next year with Bucky Irving on his third year, Sean Tucker, then you'd hope he's done enough to be your number 2 guy. He's got to be able to pass block. He's got to be able to be reliable on all 3 downs, that kind of stuff. So I think there are some areas for Tucker to improve this year to kind of solidify his spot going into next year. And obviously, if White's gone, I think they draft another running back anyway, because a lot of teams are doing that these days, is drafting running backs every year. So we'll see. But I think Tucker still has a little bit more to show that he can kind of solidify things and be a lock for that number 2 spot next year.
There's a good amount of us watching this show or in the comments right now that probably play fantasy football. I know I do. I'm pretty sure you do as well, Bailey. And it's just so interesting looking at that standpoint, how last year it was like Bucky is a really good kept secret that Bucs fans probably only knew about. And, if you do leagues with people from other states and stuff like that, you probably got away with drafting Bucky Irving because everybody knew about Rachaad White and what Rachaad White can bring. And now this year, the script has completely flipped where, like, I was looking at Sleeper NFL, their Twitter account, and, like, all they do is just tweet about Bucky Irving and using acronyms all about Bucky Irving and stuff like that. And you'd be crazy not to draft Bucky Irving if he's available really whenever you're picking in the first or second round. But I think there's a lot of stock and value in all of the Bucs running back room. But for Rachaad White specifically, because I think people are going to forget how much he brought to this team. I mean, the receiving touchdowns, the receiving yards, if you're in a PPR league and stuff like that, like Rachaad White is going to really bring some value and could potentially absolutely ball out this year. I've said before, he's kind of like Alvin Kamara a little bit. Like, obviously not Alvin Kamara now, but earlier on, he was more of a threat as a receiver than he ever was as a running back. Like, I don't think Alvin Kamara's ever had a 1,000-yard rushing season. He's just done it so much more like as a receiver. I think it's not exactly a thunder and lightning type of thing, and then a hailstorm when Sean Tucker comes in or whatever the case may be. But the Bucs running backs, in terms of we're always going to talk about Mike and Chris and things of that nature, but using the Bucs running backs in an untraditional way, I think might lead to even better success than we even imagined with this team.
I think so, and I think we'll see early on in the year how much they kind of lean on that. Because I know as much as they want to push the ball down the field, they do have to figure out, can they rely on Charlie Heck? Can they still, go into games thinking, all right, Baker's going to have time to throw. I'm not saying Charlie Heck's not going to, he's going to be a turnstile or anything at left tackle, but if you're going to adjust game plan a little bit, you might see the Bucs lean on the run a little bit more. And, the fact that they're capable of doing that now, only 2 years removed from having the dead last rushing attack in the league, it's a luxury for them. I mean, Josh Grizzard has options. So when you've got a guy like Bucky, you've got a guy like Rashad, who Rashad almost had a 1,000-yard season himself rushing a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And then what he does in the passing game, like they've got options. And I think the run game is going to be a huge part of this offense once again.
I like this comment from just a person who says the team in general is going to eat. That's true. I think the goal certainly is to win the Super Bowl, win the division, go deep into the playoffs, get Mike Evans 1,000 yards. But I think we're going to see some crazy games where it's like, Bucky has 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mike has a 170-yard game and a couple of scores. Rachaad White, 3 receiving touchdowns. So I think every game there's going to be, when the Bucs win, there's going to be like a true star of the show. Like Baker certainly will have a lot of great moments, but I think there's a couple of games where everyone else will have pedestrian numbers, and then you'll just have this one kind of insane number overall, whether it's Mike, whether it's Emeka Egbuka, Bucky, Rachaad White. Everyone really has the capability to do so. That leads me to a position that I think has gone underrated. Maybe you're paying a little bit more attention to it because we have Payne Durham as one of the training camp diaries. By the way, Elijah Roberts has stepped in, being a great teammate. We had David Walker for the training camp diaries, but unfortunately, David Walker has torn his ACL and he's going to be out for the season. So therefore, can't really have him for the training camp diary anymore. And we wish a speedy recovery to David Walker. And with David Walker out, Elijah Roberts will now be on the training camp diary. So we appreciate him for stepping in for David Walker. We also had Elijah Roberts on the podcast during the offseason. So definitely recommend everyone checking that one out. He is a friend of the program. But Payne Durham also is the offensive training camp diary that we have spoken to this summer and will continue to speak to as well. But unfortunately, we got to talk about Payne in a little bit of a negative light. He suffered from some drops during this training camp, including last night. Had an opportunity to make a nice 20-yard play, saw the ball come in, but as he hit the ground, he couldn't really stay with it. I know Payne Durham is the first guy to say that he is a blocking tight end, and that's where he's kind of going to make his bones for this team. But Cade Otton's missed a couple of practices now, Bailey. I believe it's his third practice that he's missed. So that's a lot of time for Payne Durham and Devin Culp and Tanner Towla as well. And Culp, I think, has certainly made the most of getting some more opportunities. He may play himself into potentially tight end too because of his receiving ability, if he can hold it together as a blocker. But Payne Durham blocking well, but the receiving has kind of been another story.
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit of a mixed bag with Payne, and he had the drop last night, and a couple drops throughout camp. He did have a touchdown in the red zone last night from Baker. I think that's outside of blocking, he will make his money also as maybe a third down type of guy, as a red zone guy. Just the size is hard to match up against, but in terms of being a receiving tight end, it's always, I think, going to be leaning toward Devin Culp. He has, really taken off so far in camp. And, we saw it toward the end of last year, what he did. And it was probably, I think he had like 8 or 9 catches total, but he averaged something like 19 yards a catch on those plays. So he's definitely going to be the bigger play tight end. He's got the speed, he's got the athleticism. And I was interested to hear what Josh Grizzard had to say about him last night.
Yeah.
He was saying that from the moment he got the job, Devin Culp was in contact with him, and they spent some time watching film together, and he was very interested in how he was going to be able to be used in this offense and all that. And he said that basically right now in camp, Devin Culp is seeing the fruits of his labor with that film study and the time he put in this offseason, because he's just out there making plays. He's making the explosive plays, but he's also making some of the easy ones too.
Yeah.
So his stock is certainly rising. And I think, again, this is another position where with Payne Durham, I was a huge fan of his coming out of the draft and seeing him at the Senior Bowl. And I think it's always going to be valuable to have somebody of that size when you're down in the red zone. It just feels like the 3 tight ends in a way kind of is maybe not as flashy, but similar to the Bucs running back room, which we just talked about. It's like they're 2.5 to 3 deep at that position.
Yeah.
And I like that for this offense.
The tight end position overall is a position of grit, because you got a little bit of the flash, but you got to be in the trenches as well, blocking and stuff like that. I'm not going to call it a 3-headed monster, but have you ever seen the movie Stuck on You with Matt Damon and Greg Kinnear, where they're twins that are attached? They're like joint twins. Okay, well, anyway, it's for anyone that's seen the movie Stuck on You, they have to do everything together. They're really good chefs and cooks because they can do 2 things at once. That's kind of what this tight end room, except there's 3 of them. I'm not even really counting Cole Keefe because he's kind of more of a fullback at this point. But it's kind of the 3 of them with Culp, Cade Otton, and Payne Durham. And Otton certainly paves the way when he is healthy and when he is available. A couple other comments about Culp from Josh Grizzard. He says he's grown tremendously. You can tell even after the season, as Bailey was kind of talking about with watching tape and everything like that, watching tape, learning the system and trying to figure out exactly what we were going to do and what was going to be different or the same. Then the work he put in training, we can all see it out there. The guy can fly. He has a different speed than the vast majority of tight ends in the league. He put the work in there, and now he's seeing the fruits of his labor through training camp, where he's had a couple of really explosive plays that you've seen. Just having that second year in the offense where there's not that anxiety of what are these plays, what are these formations, how can you play fast and try to get the ball to him as much as possible. He's off to a really good start as well. So yeah, definitely buy stock in Devin Culp and Payne Durham. As long as he continues to block, he's going to be in goal line situations and things like that. You want to see him be a little bit more of a well-rounded tight end, but that's why the Bucs got a good deal of depth at the position. A lot of options for Josh Broussard there, just like there's a lot of options when you go to walk-ons. There are 3 in the Tampa Bay area, one in Lakeland, another in Wesley Chapel, and a third pretty close to Raymond James Stadium over in Midtown Tampa. It's like 5 to 10 minutes away from Raymond James Stadium. When I talk about the great options, that's because their happy hour deals and their food and their drinks. There is a wide range of options with all of the drinks that they have, including $3.99 domestic pints. The food is fantastic. The shrimp, the spinach artichoke dip, the boneless wings. You can't go wrong with any of those options. And they have happy hour all of the time. Tuesday is the big day for happy hour because it's all day, including those $5 Tito's. You can still go today for happy hour on Wednesday. It's from 3 to 6 and then 9 until close. So head on over there now, listen to the podcast, and enjoy some great food and drinks over at Walk-Ons. Eat like a winner and drink like a champ at Walk-Ons. Bailey, you alluded to it a little bit before. We were talking about the running backs. There are a couple of running backs out with the Williams, DJ and Josh Williams. The Bucs, we know about the depth problems with offensive tackle and not having Chris Godwin at wide receiver. But between Kadon being out at tight end for a little bit, 2 running backs missing, and Michael Pratt not being available at the quarterback position, there are some odd spots where the Bucs might need a little bit more depth, because like at running back specifically, as much as you love all 3, like we've talked about, you need some other bodies in there. And I guess we'll see how long these running backs are out. But DJ Williams has missed a couple of practices now. Mm-hmm. I think the Bucs might need to bring in another running back, at least just for training camp, and see what they can do.
That's a good way to put it, is they just need bodies, because I think these are a lot of guys, obviously, that are going to be lower down the depth chart in camp and probably not going to make the team. But when you've got 3 preseason games, Todd Bowles talked about a little bit last night what the plan might be for the starters. Like, you're not going to see much of Bucky Irving in the preseason. You're not going to see probably not even that much Rashad White the preseason. And so then that right now, that just leaves Sean Tucker. And I don't think you want to run him 30 times over 4 quarters, 3 different times in the preseason. So we'll see. I mean, with DJ Williams, I know we didn't get specifics on him or some of the other guys, but a couple days ago, Todd Bowles said, a couple guys are dealing with hamstring injuries. Josh Williams, I didn't see him get hurt or anything on
neither did I.
On Monday, but then he wasn't dressed out yesterday, so we'll kind of see where things are at tomorrow with him. I hope especially him. I'm not just saying this as an LSU fan, but I hope that he's not out for long and that he's able to have kind of an extended run out in preseason, because I've been impressed with what he's done so far in camp, and the pads just came on, so I was kind of looking forward to seeing more from him with the pads on. So I hope this isn't a long-term thing for him, and obviously hope it's not a long-term thing for DJ Williams either. But yeah, they might have to do some additions here at different positions. Obviously, Tanner Tala is going to be a guy who gets a lot of playing time in the preseason, as he tends to do. So there's just different spots, and Bowles keeps saying they're looking at it, and that's what he's saying about every position. But I think something will probably kind of have to happen before next Saturday's preseason opener if, we don't see some of these guys get back on the field soon.
Baker Mayfield even singled out Josh Williams when he had his press conference a couple of days ago when asked about people that have stood out to him. So definitely want to see Josh Williams. Also, I mentioned this the other day about bringing in a veteran quarterback just so you have a veteran arm. I'm not even saying like push Kyle Trask. Like, I'm fine with Kyle Trask as 2, but then you have a better option at quarterback 3. I mentioned Teddy Bridgewater because he's suspended from, and again, like everyone disagrees with him getting suspended. He shouldn't have. It's such a dumb thing. But he is suspended, so he can't be coaching his team. why not kick the tires on Teddy Bridgewater? Another name that I think would be interesting. I was watching a YouTube channel, and I think Pro Football Talk was mentioning it, but not for the Bucs, but for another team. Ryan Tannehill. Because when you look at the available free agent quarterbacks, there's not a lot of good options. Like Carson Wentz is at the top of it. I don't think you want any Carson Wentz anywhere, near Tampa at the moment. Ryan Tannehill did not play last season at all. I'm not exactly sure why. I'm just saying, as a third-string quarterback, a guy that's been in the league for quite a while, he's 37 years old now, has a lot of wisdom, went to Texas A&M. He was in Texas A&M 2011. That was the first year Mike Evans got to Texas A&M and redshirted. So I'm curious, if they have any history or kind of memories together. He went to the NFL right after. But I don't know. I'd be open to bringing Ryan Tannehill in just as a third-string quarterback, veteran guy. You feel okay if something happened to Baker and Kyle Trask in those situations.
Yeah, I'm blown away that he's 37. But yeah, right. I think they do need to probably bring in another arm, because it's the same thing I just talked about with the running backs. Is you're not going to see a lot of Baker in the preseason, and right now you'll see Trask, you'll see Connor Bazelak, and then
that's it.
There's nobody else because Michael Pratt's hurt. So I think they need to get another arm in there. We were talking about this last night, you and I kind of was just saying, I want them to get somebody fun, I'm just maybe an old college quarterback that we enjoyed watching in college. It's not going to be an NFL guy,
Johnny Manziel.
Somebody of that. It's like some of the guys you see, maybe in the UFL, where you're like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. I just want to watch him play in the preseason because it gets to the point in the third quarter and fourth quarter of preseason games where you're just like, all right, what are we doing here? Let's just let's kind of get through this and get to the regular season. But I think logistically they probably need to have another arm in there if Michael Pratt's not going to be back anytime soon, and it doesn't seem like there's any indication that he will be.
Yeah, especially a back injury is such a touch and go type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
You never really know when he's going to be available, because one day it's great, one day it's not. So you definitely have to monitor that. One more thing that happened in practice that I think we got to talk about, because the pads are on, we're seeing a lot more one-on-one stuff, and appreciate everybody that's been checking out our social media. There's a video we posted last night that did pretty good numbers. It was Hassan Reddick against Luke Gedeke, and Gedeke certainly won the rep, and people are freaking out that Hassan Reddick did not look good. Again, thank you to everybody that watched the video. I encourage everybody to continue watching the video. It was one rep, though. One of several reps that are going to happen. Yeah. And we can only film so much, then we get cut off by the Bucs PR staff. Don't worry about Hassan Reddick. He still is looking pretty good, but Luke Gedeke is also a great offensive tackle. And Bailey, there were a lot of other matchups in the trenches where the D-line got the better of the interior offensive line. So, again, it's just a lot of back and forth, but it's great to see the physicality.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the more fun things that we've gotten to see over the last couple of days. Now that the pads are on, seeing the DBs go up against the wide receivers, and also seeing O-line, D-line, and all that stuff. And I was very impressed with the back-to-back-to-back reps of, I believe it was first Logan Hall beat Cody Mauch, then Vita Vea beat Graham Barton, and then Kalijah Cansey beat Ben Bredesen. It was just the interior of the Bucs defensive line looks ready to go. So, yeah, I mean, it's give and take, as there always is in camp. So, that I think is one of the more fun things that we're going to see right now.
Vita Vea and Graham Barton keep colliding into each other. There's at least a couple of snaps each practice since the pads have come on where one of them ends up on the ground. And everyone's healthy, thankfully, and stuff like that. But there are some true collisions with Graham Barton and Vita Vea. So the physicality has definitely been brought. Let's get a couple super chats in before we close out the show. Thank you, everybody, for your super chats and your participation and all that good stuff. We'll start with Bucs Basement. Thanks for the $5 super chat. Who says, it's camp, so no, I'm not going to panic. Talking about the Baker interceptions. The secondary is clearly hungry and took Bowles serious. The more concerning thing for me was Baker being 5 of 16. I wouldn't worry that much about he had a bad first practice when the pads were on. There was a lot of overthrows and things like that, but I would chalk that up to a bad practice. I wouldn't chalk that up into, anything that's going to be consistent for Baker Mayfield. Again, there wasn't really Mike, no Chris Godwin just yet. Some of the overthrows were worse in 7-on-7 than 11-on-11s. I think it's more of I mean, I haven't seen coverage like this in the secondary in training camp. I don't think like ever since I started covering the Bucs. That's how good it's been.
Yeah, and we are seeing the cornerbacks play closer to the line, playing more man like press coverage up close, not playing 10 yards off as we've seen in the past. And I think that's something that receivers and Baker are getting adjusted to. And I also do, again, we talked about it earlier at the beginning of the show, just the adjustment of trying to push the ball down the field a little bit more. And that's, I think, maybe one thing that there's some concern or some risk involved with doing that with Baker Mayfield, because he hasn't been the most consistent on those deep balls. And the thing I could say to that, though, because I mean, he had Jalen McMillan wide open on one last night, and he overthrew him by about 5 to 7 yards. And I think the thing I could say to that is, Josh Grizzard wants to push the ball deep. They want to hit some more of those explosive plays, but if they aren't able to get it down, I don't think it's going to be one of those things where they're smashing their head against the wall trying to make it happen. They're not going to force it.
Yeah.
So I think they'll be smart enough to tailor everything to what makes the Bucs efficient on offense and able to continue putting up points the way they did last year.
He's 0813, who's now been a Pewter Report YouTube channel member for 11 months. Thank you so much for your support. Says Baker interception's not a concern unless they're thrown on routine plays, in my opinion. There's been a couple on routine plays, but I don't think we're there just yet. Mark Fisher, good to hear from you. Thanks for the $4.99 super chat. We had a great conversation plenty of times yesterday during practice. We were right by Mark. So good to see you, Mark. Appreciate our conversation as well. Says, hey, guys, found y'all's comments last night when we were talking about situational pass rushing was insightful. Passing was insightful. Many times the QB was ignoring some obvious early open reads. I mean, we don't always know exactly what the call is or, what Grizzard is telling Baker to look for on certain plays and things like that. Maybe they don't want him to dump it off to the running back on a certain play. Those are answers that we're not really going to be able to get because they're going to keep it in-house and stuff like that. But when we see it's fourth down and you got to get 15 yards, well, Kyle Trask isn't going to throw it 4 yards, or Baker's not going to try to scramble for 6 yards. Like not every situation is the same, pretty much.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's what I was getting at earlier. And I was saying you're going to take a little bit more risks in practice than you might in an actual game setting. Because in a game setting, you do have that outlet, whether it's the running back or the tight end, kind of out there in the flat. And I think right now when they're working on specific things, I'm sure the quarterbacks are encouraged to say or are told, try to make it happen. That's what we're working on right now. What are you getting out of hitting a wide open guy 4 yards away from you in a practice setting? So I think that's true.
Another super chat from Mark Fisher. Thank you very much for the $4.99. And I hope to see you on Friday as well when we were chatting yesterday. It says, it's clear that Bowles is trying to play his cornerbacks closer, both with scrimmage and drills. Also, is Jordan versus Heck a real competition at left tackle or no? So with the corners, they are definitely playing up closer. They are stingy. It is like white on rice. It is like, they are taped to the wide receivers. That's been an emphasis, and the Bucs defensive backs are taking it loud and clear. As far as real competition for Charlie Heck, so the thing with Michael Jordan, his airness, the greatest basketball player of all time, now playing football, he's mostly been a guard. He's been a guard his whole career. He's never taken an NFL snap at offensive tackle. Now, when he came here to Tampa, he was playing guard at first, but they did move him at offensive tackle a little bit more. But Bailey, I think the biggest threat or the biggest competition to Charlie Heck is going to be either Tyler McClellan, who they also signed at the same time as Michael Jordan, or Ben Chikuma has looked, I think, much better than a lot of us have expected so far, just given his inexperience of playing the game.
I think so. I don't even really look at any of them as real competition to Charlie Heck right now. It seems pretty clear that they're going full steam ahead with Heck at left tackle, and kind of they're trying to find more of the depth because Heck is depth. So when he elevates up to a starting role in Tristan Wirf's place, who's going to replace him as depth? So I think hearing from Grizzard, hearing from Ben Bredesen last night, and kind of just everyone we've talked to so far about Charlie Heck, they're all very confident in him, and they know that he's here for a reason, and he's played, I don't know how many years he has in the league at this point, but a guy who's played before, who has experience, and they think they can fill that hole with him for for however many games they need to.
Rolf Steinbauer says, didn't Baker fumble the other day on that Vea domino effect play? Yes, he did. They kind of collided into Baker, and he lost the ball there. Baker's had a couple of moments where he hasn't held on to the ball. Yaya Diaby had a strip sack, the play Rolf is talking about. And then last night, Bailey, it was maybe the craziest thing ever. Baker sprinted for about, 30 yards. No one was around him. And then he just fumbled the ball on his own. It was like almost kind of like that time Daniel Jones sprinted all the way down the field against the Eagles, had a walk-in touchdown, but then he fell at like the 15-yard line or whatever it was. It was very odd. Baker just fumbled on its own. You could probably see it on social media somewhere. There's a couple of videos floating around. He did recover the fumble, but damn, that was crazy.
Yeah, it was weird to see because I had even like he's scrambling and there's no one around him, so I'm like, all right. I look down, I'm starting to type on my phone or whatever, and then I kind of just hear something and I look up and he's like scrambling to pick up the ball. And I asked you, I was like, did he just drop? Like, was anybody around him or did he just drop it? Because it couldn't believe it that he just let go of it. But
it was kind of crazy. We'll say John Cena forced the fumble on that one. Bolaman Seba, thanks for the $1.99 super chat, says, are the Bucs covered enough in the linebacker position? If you're talking about inside linebacker, yeah, for sure. With Levante, who again is pretty much practicing every other day, Servase Dennis, Deion Jones, and Anthony Walker hasn't participated just yet, but I think he'll be good to go by the start of the regular season. They also got two guys. Like one guy made a nice play last night, John Bullock, the undrafted free agent linebacker out of Nebraska. He was covering Tez Johnson. That's not easy to do. Now, Tez Johnson was running a crosser. It wasn't like he had to run 30 yards down the field with him. But staying with Tez Johnson, that certainly gets my attention. And then the other young buck, Nick Jackson from Iowa, in the mix here and there. I'm not going to say he's been like exceptional or anything like that, but I think you kind of wait and see what you have with them before you start looking outside for extra depth. But I'm fine with the Antonio Greer as well, Junior. So I'm fine with what they have right now at inside linebacker.
I am too. I don't think obviously with last night Levante David was had the night off, and then Walker has been out, of course. So I think, I look at the starting linebackers, and I was like, oh, Deion Jones is filling in for Levante, and I was like, well, normally that would also be Anthony Walker filling in for Levante. Right. So it does look a little bare when you look at the starting group, but no. And for the preseason, they've got the guys you mentioned, the rookies, and they've got Antonio Greer. I'm trying to remember now. I feel like there's another one that I'm missing, and I can't remember if he's still on the team or not. Was it Daniel Griesiak? Is he still on the team? He might be a name that I'm just thinking I'm pulling from last year. I haven't noticed him if he is, but nope, he got waived in April. Yeah. I'm thinking about last year, but I think they're covered at the position for now.
Yeah, I think they're good for sure. By the way, as we wrap up today's show, we're not done yet with all the content and stuff because there's practice tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday as well. So we're gonna have Pewter Report podcasts tomorrow on Thursday and on Friday as well. And Friday show is going to be earlier. It's probably going to be around 1 o'clock, maybe 1:30 once we get done with practice. We're going to keep trying to do that with the kind of last practice of the week during the business week. So we'll have an earlier show on Friday around 1 o'clock or so. In the meantime, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well. Tell us what you have thought about the Bucs during training camp so far. Also, Bailey and I have been doing a quick recap on social media of each practice. So you can see it on our Instagram and our YouTube. We'll continue to do that. Might be a couple of different group of us each time. Adam might be in the mix, or it might just be one of us doing it as well. But pay attention to that if you want an immediate reaction to everything that went on, and we'll continue to recap it as well. But that's going to do it for us on today's show. We have a show tomorrow at 4 and Friday. So for Bailey Adams, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.